The spiral staircase groans beneath the party's boots as they climb even higher through the ancient tower. Dust hangs motionlessly in the air, untouched for centuries, while the walls are lined with shelves of forgotten tomes and the remains of those who climbed before them. Then suddenly they hear a voice break the silence. It doesn't echo through the halls, it simply exists, calm and measured, and impossibly close.
You continue to climb. How admirable. Tell me, heroes, how many times have you convinced yourselves that courage alone could change the inevitable? Kingdoms have risen and fallen beneath my gaze. Dynasties have turned to dust while I endured. Yet, here you are, believing your fleeting lives will succeed where history itself has failed. Come then, climb the final steps. Witness the futility of hope with your own eyes, and know that nothing you do here today will stop what has already begun.
Yes, in today's video we are covering one of the most evil and sadistic spellcasters in the whole of D&D, the Lich. Hello and welcome to Dungeon Deep Dive, where we talk about all things D&D monsters, from monsters and their lore to their publication history, where they originated, and how you could use them in your D&D games. The Lich is perhaps the ultimate spellcaster in Dungeons & Dragons, a wizard so obsessed with conquering death that they willingly sacrifice their own humanity in the pursuit of immortality. A Lich is a humanoid undead whose bodies were generally gaunt and skeletal, with withered flesh stretched tight across horribly visible bones, but they could vary greatly in appearance depending on the Lich's age and level of decay, with young Liches appearing technically nearly alive. If their eyes have been destroyed, lost or rotted away, bright pinpoints of crimson light burns in their empty sockets. Some can even maintain a hint of their old hair or beards. Liches often do not have lips or necessary organs to produce natural speak, but they had the ability to project speech from their mouths magically. They do, however, still move their jaw to aid in the illusion of speech, and as their bodies continue to decay over the centuries, a Lich might eventually become a Demilich, which is a Lich who has evolved beyond a need for its undead body. You will sometimes see Liches adorned in rich and regal fineries and jewelry, often holding some sort of strong magical power. When a spellcaster chooses to chase the power of Lichdom, it isn't for the fear of death, but to buy themselves all the time they desire to pursue their own ambitions and goals, throwing away all mortal connections in exchange for solitary existence to chase greater knowledge and power. Now, the calling card of a Lich was that it had tethered its soul to the prime material plane, and as a result, most Liches retain much of their personality and even emotions that they had in the life they began with. However, countless years of undeath cause memories to fade and the mind to twist. Eventually, a Lich loses all shreds of its humanity entirely, and when a spellcaster finally achieves Lichdom, it's not all sunshines and rainbows after. They maintain their existence through sheer force of will alone. Over time, however, the willpower changes into obsession for more and more power. Some even seem on the border of insanity for acquiring all the arcane secrets they can. The obsession will even go as far as the Lich just downright forgetting everything about their former life, even to the point where they abandon their names they had before Lichdom, instead taking on ominous titles and pseudonyms. Liches often hold a very proud and arrogant personality, demanding subservience from everyone they meet, and being selfish, cold and cunning entities. Liches only really care about their own affairs, and they pay little to no attention to the living unless their intentions directly affect their own goals. With Liches having an unnaturally long life, they become masters of whatever knowledge that they are in search of, with that being godhood, the arcane, or even the multiverse itself. You could say that Liches are hoarders in a way when it comes to the arcane items, scrolls, and tomes. They tend to use these items excessively and lay intricate and deadly traps to protect their possessions from being stolen. And with their ever-longing life, Liches learn to grow a never-ending amount of patience when it comes to their plans and goals, spending years and decades to plan and execute their schemes to perfection. Liches do have the ability to cast any and all spells that they had in their mortal life, as well as any spells that they choose to cast when in full Lich mode. There are some spells that when the Lich memorizes them, they will no longer require the spell components. There are some spells that when a Lich memorizes them, they will no longer require the spell components normally needed to cast the spell, purely because of the years the Lich has spent mastering and memorizing the spell. One of the catches, however, when it comes to Lichdom is having to dive into the realm of necromancy and wield great power over life and death. They become highly proficient in reanimating the dead, so it should come as no shock to any adventuring party to encounter undead minions when encountering a Lich. Liches also have the ability to regenerate when taking damage from battle, but more importantly, a Lich is not that easy to kill. Yes, you may deal a final blow on the undead spellcaster and cheer with victory, but that does not necessarily mean that you've killed them. And that's because most or all Liches will usually have a phylactery hidden away just in case. A phylactery is probably the Lich's most prized possession because it holds their undead life essence. And the phylactery could be anything. It could be a priceless treasure or something as small as a useless trinket. And as long as the phylactery remains unharmed, the Lich will remain immortal. A slain Lich that still has its phylactery will have its mind and spirit shunted from its slain body and retreat into the phylactery, where it will reappear in a new body within a few days. However, a Lich that is in transit from its slain body to a phylactery is called a Lichni. They are impervious to any attempts to harm it and could also inhabit other corpses temporarily to get to their body or the phylactery. Liches are not the most sociable creatures. They rarely leave their privacy of their lairs, although some would travel to places of arcane learning and masquerade as living spellcasters eager to learn about new theories and research. But in general, a Lich keeps only the company of whatever creatures help them secure their lair or something that it has complete mastery over. This most commonly includes constructs like flesh golems or animated corpses, flame skulls and wraiths, but Liches have also been known to have worked alongside with demons and devils. They might also make clones of themselves known as false Liches to defend their lairs. Actual Liches don't come by any natural or spontaneous means, and transforming into one requires an individual to make a very purposeful and evil decision to pursue the ancient and terrible rituals that will make them into a Lich. And there's more than one way to become a Lich, but as a rule, all methods were secret and dangerous rites that involve the costly and complex crafting of a phylactery. Acquiring the knowledge of one of those rituals often required making deals with dark gods or fiends who demanded service or fealty in exchange for the secret. Alright, let's go into the next section of the video, the publication of the Lich throughout D&D, and then the stat blocks and a variant that I kind of like. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I may have to use it in my games that I've created for you guys to use as well. The Lich made its first appearance in the first edition 1975 Supplement 1 Greyhawk. They're called skeletal monsters of magical origin that were once a powerful magical practitioner / cleric in their living life. They range from a 12th level spellcaster all the way up to a level 18 spellcaster and are able to cast any spell that is usable at the appropriate level. As well as this, they also have the ability to cause paralyzation with no saving throws, with nothing but a touch or a mere sight of the Lich will send creatures below level 5 fleeing in fear. And moving on to the 1977 AD&D Monster Manual, in this book we get some real skeletal looking art, which I kind of love honestly. It states that the Lich is most often encountered within hidden chambers, this lair typically being in some wilderness area or vast underground labyrinth, and in any case both solitary, constructed of stone and very dark. It also says that with the power of Lichdom they cannot be harmed by any attacks that are not magical, and magical attacks that have magical properties of 6 hit dice or lower. They changed the paralyzation touch that the Lich had in the previous book, where now it causes 1 to 10 points of damage and paralyzes the target if they fail their saving throw. Moving over to 2nd edition, we get the Lich in the 1993 AD&D 2nd edition Monstrous Manual, where the art in this book moves more from He-Man Skeletor to more Scooby-Doo mummy villain. They are described as the single most powerful form of undead known in existence. It says a Lich greatly resembles a rat or a mummy. Being gaunt and skeletal in form, the creature's eye sockets are black and empty, save for the fierce pinpoints of light which serve the Lich as eyes. It says that even though they are not huge fans of getting into hand-to-hand combat with their enemies, they are more than capable of holding their own if they need to. We get some information stating that the magical nature of the Lich and its undead state make it utterly immune to charm, sleep, enfeeblement, polymorph, cold, electricity, insanity, and death spells. If you have a priest of level 8 or higher or a paladin of level 10 or higher, they will be able to attempt to turn undead a Lich, but but the DC will be very high. Liches in the book are classed as solitary creatures that have cast aside their place as living beings and now want little to do with the world of the living. Although the Lich has no interest in good or evil as we understand it, the creature will do whatever it must to further its own cause. And since they usually feel like the living are of little importance, the Lich is often viewed as evil by those who encounter it. But in rare cases, Liches of most unusual nature can be found which are of any alignment. We also get information of a Demilich, which is not a weaker version of the Lich, but rather the final stage of a Lich's existence. After spending centuries or even a millennia mastering every form of magic available on the material plane, a Lich eventually abandons its physical body to explore the mysteries of higher planes of existence. As its body decays, only its skull and a few scattered bones and a pile of dust remain. But these remnants are still infused with immense magical power. The skull becomes an almost indestructible artifact, resistant to nearly all spells and weapons, and is capable of unleashing devastating attacks. If disturbed, it emits a supernatural howl that acts as a death ray, instantly killing those who fail to resist it, before using the enchanted gemstones that have replaced several of its teeth to tear the souls from its enemies, causing their bodies to wither into dust while imprisoning their souls within the gems. Even destroying the skull is no guarantee of victory, as the trapped souls may already have been consumed forever, and unless its shattered remains are sanctified with holy water and magical power, the Demilich will reform within days. And to make matters worse, the pile of dust that was once its body can reanimate into a spectral guardian, with younger Demiliches drawing strength from every blow struck against them until they reform into a ghostly likeness of their former Lich body. And despite appearing as little more than floating skulls, the Demilich represents the pinnacle of Lich evolution, an ancient, almost incomprehensible undead being that has transcended the need for a physical form, while retaining enough power to annihilate even the greatest of heroes who dare to disturb their eternal rest. We also get a Psionic Lich in the 1994 Monstrous Compendium Annual Volume 1. A Psionic Lich is said to be one of the rarest and most terrifying forms of the undead ever introduced into Dungeons & Dragons. Much like a traditional Lich, it is born from an individual's desire to transcend death, but rather than relying on arcane power, a Psionic Lich achieves immortality through the sheer power of its mind. These beings were once master psionics whose mental abilities rivaled the great archmages, and though years of forbidden experimentation, they learned to extend their existence beyond the limit of mortality. Physically, they resemble ordinary liches, with their flesh shriveled tightly against their bones and crimson lights burning within their empty eyes, often still dressed in robes or armor that they wore in life. However, beneath this familiar appearance lies a creature sustained not by magic but by overwhelming psychic energy. We then get the Suel Lich in the 1995 Monstrous Compendium Annual Volume 2. And unlike the traditional Lich, a Suel Lich does not preserve itself within a single undead body. Instead, it exists as a being of pure negative energy forced to continually possess bodies of living humans in order to survive. Each host rapidly withers under the strain, aging at an accelerated rate until little remains but a dried, leathery husk with black flames burning from the eyes. As the body eventually burns out or is destroyed in battle, the Lich's shadow-like essence has only a short time to find another suitable host before it is lost forever. This method of immortality makes the Suel Lich one of the most unsettling variations of the creature, and as every new body comes at a cost of an innocent life whose soul is utterly annihilated beyond the reach of resurrection or even a wish spell. We also get the Banelich in the 1996 Monstrous Compendium Annual Volume 3. We're getting a Lich every compendium here, we love it. Baneliches are not merely a spellcaster seeking immortality, nor a mind elevated beyond death through the arcane or psionic mastery. Instead, it was once a high-ranking cleric of Bane, the god of tyranny and strife, transformed directly through divine ritual into an immortal existence of its god's will. These beings appear as gaunt, decayed humanoids draped in rotting ceremonial vestments, their hollow eye sockets burning with red pinpoint light, and the black hand of Bane marked prominently upon their form as both a symbol and a curse. But what sets the Banelich apart from other liches is its role as a divine instrument, rather than an independent seeker of knowledge or power. While it retains the spellcasting ability of a powerful cleric, it can continue to wield divine magic without material components. Its true purpose lies in enforcing fear, obedience, and dominance in the name of its god. Its presence alone is enough to break the will of lesser beings, and creatures of weak resolve flee in terror at the sight of it, while those strong enough to resist still find themselves shaking by overwhelming dread. Moving on to 3rd edition, we get an appearance of the Lich in the 2000 D&D Monsters Manual and the 2003 3.5 Monster Manual. The 3rd edition Lich didn't reinvent the creature as a whole, but instead refined it into the version that would become the foundation of modern Dungeons and Dragons. Rather than focusing on new lore, this edition emphasized the Lich as an immortal mastermind, an undead spellcaster with the patience to weave plans that unfold over decades or even centuries. Free from the concerns of mortal life, a Lich could manipulate kingdoms and generations from the shadows before even revealing itself. Mechanically, 3.5 solidified many of the abilities that players now consider iconic. A Lich now radiates an aura of supernatural fear that can send weaker enemies fleeing, while its touch can leave even powerful adventurers paralyzed. Combine that with potent spellcasting and powerful magical defenses, it becomes a tactical enemy that rewarded preparation over brute force. This edition also expanded the concept of the phylactery. Rather than being a single, predefined object, a Lich could bind its soul to almost any exquisitely crafted item of great value. From crowns and rings to statues and works of art. Unless this phylactery was discovered and destroyed, the Lich would simply regenerate a new body after its physical form was defeated. Perhaps more importantly as well, 3rd edition fully established Lichdom as a transformation that powerful spellcasters could willingly pursue. By providing clear rules of becoming a Lich, the edition reinforced the idea that every Lich was once a mortal wizard who consciously sacrificed their humanity in exchange for eternal life, cementing the creature as one of D&D's most iconic paths to forbidden immortality. Now, we have to talk about the most infamous Lich ever, Vecna. I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible because the video is already going a lot longer than I thought, so I'm going to try and make this quick. Once a mortal wizard, Vecna, the lust for power drove him to become one of the first and most infamous Liches in Dungeons & Dragons history. Alongside his vampire lieutenant Kaz, he built an entire empire through conquest, necromancy, and dark magic until Kaz eventually betrayed him with the legendary Sword of Kaz. The battle destroyed Vecna's body, leaving behind only his hand and his eye, artifacts so steep in evil that they become some of the most iconic magical items in D&D, but death was not enough to stop Vecna. Over the years, he returned again and again, ascending from Lich to demigod to full deity, becoming the god of secrets, forbidding knowledge, and undeath. He crossed world, threatened entire settings, escaped imprisonment multiple times, and most recently became the central villain of Vecna, the Eve of Ruin. Honestly, if you want a deep dive into Vecna, let me know, because he absolutely deserves a video of his own. Even though Liches are 9 times out of 10 evil, there are odd good apples that even come out to become good Liches, like the ones in the 2001 Monsters of Faerun book. Like for example the Banelich, which are elven Liches who seek the power of undeath to become the backbone of their families for guardianship, a well of magic, and a wise counsel. We also get the Dry Lich in the 2005 Sandstorm book. A Dry Lich is an especially horrid sort of undead spellcaster. They are not purposely evil, but they do have their own agendas and do not have a regard for the living. Instead of searching for godlike power, the Dry Lich aims to continue to spread the waste and preserve the land already taken by the Wastelands. A Dry Lich is a gaunt, skeletal, unusual humanoid. Its flesh is parchment dry and clings tightly to the bone. A thick incrustation of glittering white salt covers the body. A weird green light lights its hollow eye sockets, and it wears the garb as it did in life, which is generally just simple and practical costume rather than ornate robes of the typical Lich. There are cleric versions of the Dry Lich, however, that instead of wearing rags, they are wearing a full set of heavy armor. Moving on to 4th edition, we get the Lich in the 2008 4th edition monster manual, and in this monster manual, we get the standard human wizard Lich and the Eladrin wizard variant. The Eladrin prefers to use necrotic orbs and entropic orbs as its form of attack. We also get writings of the Lich Vestige, a minion creature representing a weak arcane remnant of a destroyed Lich as well. We get a template for the Lich in the 4E Dungeon Master's Guide, where it can be applied to an intelligent creature of at least level 11 with an intelligence score of 13 or higher, regardless of arcane spellcasting ability. This suggests that monsters such as a Beholder, Oni, or a Mind Flayer could have the Lich template placed upon them. We get a cacophony of variants to the Lich in this edition. We get the Eladrin, Banelich, the Thicket Dryad Lich, the Aberrant Void Lich, the Mind Flayer Alhoon, and the Demilich. We also get the Lich Necromancer, a minion Lich, and a much more powerful Lich, the Lich Soul Reaver, in the 2010 4th edition Monster Vault book. And finally into 5th edition, we get the Lich in the 5th edition monster manual. The Lich presented here is a powerful challenge rating 21 creature with the ability of an 18th level arcane spellcaster. It retains its traditional cold paralyzing touch, its immunity to non-magical attacks, its frightening gaze, which is no longer limited by level, and the Drake Lich, which we covered in a previous video here. Okay, so we've gone over everything that we have on the Lich. Now let's go over the stat block and the homebrew stat block I've made for you guys to use. Liches are undead humanoids with an AC of 17 and 135 hit points and a challenge rating of 21. They have saving throws in Con, Intelligence, and Wisdom, and they are skilled in Arcana, History, Insight, Perception, and have a damage resistance to Cold, Lightning, and Necrotic. They have a damage immunity to poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks, and a condition immunity to charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, and poisoned. They have true sight of 120 feet with a passive perception of 19 and can learn up to 5 other languages. For the traits, with it being a legendary creature, they get legendary resistances, where if the Lich fails a saving throw, they can choose to succeed 3 times a day. They get an ability called Rejuvenation, where if it has a phylactery, a destroyed Lich gains a new body within 1d10 days, regaining all of its hit points and becomes active again. The new body appears within 5 feet of the phylactery. For the spellcasting, the Lich is a level 18 spellcaster, and its spellcasting ability is a spell save DC of 20 of intelligence with a plus 12 to hit on spell attacks. The Lich can cast the cantrips Mage Hand and Prestidigitation, Ray of Frost. For first level, it can cast Detect Magic, Magic Missile, Shield, and Thunder Wave. For second level, it can cast Acid Arrow, Detect Thoughts, Invisibility, and Mirror Image. For third level, it can cast Animate Dead, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, Fireball. For fourth level, Blight, Dimension Door. Fifth level, Cloud Kill, Scry. For 6th level, Disintegrate, Globe of Invulnerability. 7th level, Finger of Death, Plane Shift. 8th level, Dominate Monster and Power Word Stun. And 9th level, Power Word Kill. It also gains an ability called Turn Resistance, where the Lich has advantage on saving throws against any effect that turns undead. For its actions, it only gets one action, and that's the Paralyzing Touch, where it has a melee spell attack of plus 12 to hit with a reach of 5 feet and deals 3d6 cold damage, and the target must succeed on a DC 18 Constitution saving throw or be paralyzed for 1 minute, although the target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success. And for its legendary actions, choosing from the options it has, it can cast a cantrip. For 2 points, it can cast Paralyzing Touch, and then for another 2 actions, it can use Frightening Gaze, where the Lich fixes its gaze on one creature it can see within 10 feet of it, and the target must succeed on a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw against this magic or become frightened for a minute. And then finally, for all of the legendary actions, it can use Disrupt Life, where each non-dead creature within 20 feet of the Lich must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw against the magic, or take 6d6 necrotic damage on a fail save, or half as much on a success. And now for the Paradox Lich that I've made. I wanted to create a Lich that wasn't just stronger than the original, but one that changed the entire counter, and instead of building another spellcaster with big numbers. The idea behind the Paradox Lich was that it made the party fear like reality itself. And I changed up like the phylactery thing a little bit. Instead of it having a phylactery, it exists as a fixed moment in time, making the Lich almost impossible to kill until the paradoxes are destroyed. It has an AC of 19 with 285 hit points and a challenge rating of 21, and with a speed of 30 feet, and I've gave it a fly speed of 30 feet. And it also has saving throws in Con, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. It has skills in Arcana, History, Insight, Perception, as well as damage resistances to Cold, Lightning, Necrotic, Poison, and then Bludgeoning, Piercing, and Slashing from non-magical attacks. It's immune to the conditions such as Charmed, Exhaustion, Frightened, Paralyzed, and Poisoned. Again, same as the original Lich, it has true sight of 120 feet. And for the traits, I've gave it the legendary resistances again, but I also have made an ability called Temporal Anchors, where the Paradox Lich doesn't anchor its soul to an object, but 3 paradox timelines. Separate pockets of reality accessed through rifts within the lair, and while any temporal anchor still remains, the Lich retains its paradox body trait, which we'll go over in a second, and cannot be permanently destroyed. Each temporal anchor is located within a separate paradox rift. A rift appears as a shimmering portal within the lair that leads to a self-contained extra-dimensional scenario. Each scenario represents a distorted moment in time and must be completed before the anchor can be destroyed. The temporal anchor can't be damaged or interacted with directly until associated paradoxes are resolved. I'm leaving them open for the DM to change them into whatever they want to be. They don't have to be like a set scenario. When the paradox within a rift is resolved, its temporal anchor becomes vulnerable for 1 minute, and during that turn it can be destroyed, and it has an AC of 17 and 25 hit points, but it has an immunity to poison and psychic. But if it isn't destroyed in time, the paradox resets and it must be completed again. Think of it as like a little raid challenge. That's what I like to think of. Once all anchors are destroyed, the Paradox Lich can then be permanently destroyed destroyed only when all 3 temporal anchors have been destroyed. Now for its paradox body ability, the Lich exists in several overlapping states of reality. While at least 1 temporal anchor exists, the Lich can't be reduced below 1 hit point. At the start of each of its turns, it will then regain 20 hit points, and whenever the Lich takes damage, you roll a d6, and if it lands on a 6, the damage is ignored as reality rewrites the event. For spellcasting, the Lich is a level 18 spellcaster with the same DC and spell attack to hit. For spellcasting, the Lich is a level 18 spellcaster and can cast the cantrips Chill Touch, Mage Hand, and Ray of Frost. First level, it can cast Chromatic Orb, False Life, Mage Armor, and Magic Missile. Second level, we have Detect Thoughts, Whole Person, Invisibility, Mirror Image, and Misty Step. Third level, we have Animate Dead, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, Fireball, and Vampiric Touch. Fourth level, we have Dimension Door and Phantasmal Killer. Fifth level, we have Telekinesis and Wall of Force. Sixth level, we have Chain Lightning and Disintegrate. Seventh level, we have Finger of Death and Teleport. Eighth level, we have Dominate Monster, Power Word Stun, and ninth level, we have Power Word Kill. Now for its actions, it's got a little more give to it than the original Lich. It has a multi-attack where it can make 2 Arcane Bolt attacks. The Arcane Bolt is a ranged spell attack with a plus 12 to hit and a range of 120 feet, and deals 4d8 necrotic damage. And if the target has half of its hit points or fewer remaining, its speed is reduced to 0 until the start of the Lich's next turn. It has a recharge ability called Reality Fracture, where the Lich tears open a fracture in reality at the point it can see within 120 feet. Each creature in this 20-foot radius sphere centered on that point must make a DC 20 intelligence saving throw, where on a fail, the creature takes 10d8 psychic damage and is returned into the space it occupied at the beginning of its previous turn. Any movements made since then is undone. Think of it as like the Overwatch character that can jump really fast, go really fast, and go back in time. I can't remember what they're called. Kind of like that. And then finally, once a day, it can use an attack called Unmake, where the Lich targets 1 creature it can see within 60 feet, and the target must succeed on a DC 20 Constitution saving throw or take 20d6 necrotic damage and be removed from existence until the end of its turn. While removed, the creature is incapacitated, it can't be targeted or affected by anything, it doesn't perceive the passage of time, and it returns to the nearest unoccupied space when it disappears. And for the legendary actions, it can cast a cantrip for 1 point, it can cast Shadow Step also for 1 point. It has an ability called Temporal Pulse for 2 actions, where 1 creature the Lich can see within 60 feet must make a DC 20 Wisdom saving throw or have its initiative become 0 until the start of its next round. And for 3 actions, it can cast a spell that is 3rd level or lower from this spell list. Liches are honestly the pinnacle of high level D&D combat and villainy, and I feel every DM needs to run a Lich at least once in their DMing career. There are so many possibilities that you can have for the Lich. You can run the classic Lich setting, the Lich sitting at the top of the tower with armies of undead assaulting towns and cities around, while the party needs to venture deep into the tower to kill the Lich, dealing with numerous traps and encounters. But that's all I have for you guys on the Lich today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if there's anything I've missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. What monster should I cover next? Let me know in the comments below, and I will add your comment at the end of that video. You can find links to all my socials down below to keep up to date on the video schedule, and I would like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.